Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Today is Friday, May 19th, 2023. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. The greatest running back to ever play professional football, Jim Brown, is dead at the age of 87. We will talk about his life and legacy with a number of people, including sports journalist Jim Trotter, also Hall of Famer Marshall Faulk, and others. That'll be in the second hour of our show. You do not want to miss that. Also on today's show, black people, why are they 5 times more likely to be audited by the IRS? We'll talk with a tax expert about how to protect yourself. South Carolina has joined a list of states that have waged war when it comes to education, critical race theory, and I warned y'all about Moms of Liberty. And so Michael Harriot has a 4-part series on the route where he talks about what these folks are doing that's literally destroying black education in South Carolina. You don't want to miss that conversation, folks. It is time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
All right, folks, let's get things started here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Again, Jim Brown, breaking news, Jim Brown, the great NFL player, the greatest running back in history, passed away today at the age of 87. His wife released that information on social media announcing his death. His wife Monique. Of course, he was a star football player in college, star in the NFL, played only 9 seasons, left at the height of his career, finished as the all-time greatest rusher in NFL history, a record later broken by Emmitt Smith. In the second hour of today's show, we're going to pay tribute to Jim Brown. A number of people are going to be joining us, talking about his life and legacy. But also remember, it wasn't just what he did on the field in Hollywood, but also when it came to community groups and also anti-gang initiatives. And so there are a number of folks we'll be chatting with, journalists as well as activists, as we talk about, remember, Jim Brown, again, dead at the age of 87. Folks, the Internal Revenue Service admits that black taxpayers are more likely to be subjected to financial investigations than any other group. That's just absolutely stupid. According to the New York Times, IRS Commissioner Daniel Werfel sent a letter to the U.S. Senate detailing their research indicating the audit disparities. The letter in part says a recent study estimated using imputed race values that black taxpayers are audited at 3 to 5 times the rate of non-black taxpayers. The research further suggests that most of this disparity is driven by differences in correspondence audit rates among taxpayers claiming the Earned Income Tax Credit. We're deeply concerned by these findings and committed to doing the work to understand and address any disparate impact of the actions we take. Joining us now is an IRS-registered tax preparer and the owner of Infinity Taxes and Beyond, Douglas Lawson from Riviera Beach, Florida. Douglas, glad to have you here. Roland Martin Unfiltered. What the hell? Seriously? I mean, ain't like black folks. I mean, if you want to be auditing somebody, audit these rich-ass white folks who are cheating the government out of millions.
Brother Roland, I appreciate the time. It's always a pleasure to be here. I had a conversation with my buddy yesterday when this was posted, and his first response to me, the sky's blue and water is wet. It's happening. It's continuing to happen. And because they found out that it's actually a disparity at 5 times the amount of non-black taxpayers are being audited, it's ridiculous. So when we have 5 times the amount of our black folks that are being audited by the IRS and the disparities that are currently set, we have to understand that the system is working exactly how it was created to work. It's not broken. It was created against our communities, and we have to be very intentional about it. So I really want to thank, our representatives that sent out letters to investigate this. Representative Bill Pascrell from New Jersey, he said, I need to find out about what's going on because this is disgraceful and must end. So thank you, Representative Bill Pascrell, for standing up for our community and fighting this injustice that was set forth against our community.
So they're claiming this is tied to the earned income tax credit. Explain.
So they're claiming that the EIC credit is the reason that the algorithm is causing for the audits to be presented, and the majority of them are looked at. It's non-race based. It's non-income based. It's based exclusively on some of the credits that are being received. But lo and behold, these credits are predominantly going to minority and low-income families. So that's why a larger amount of individuals are currently being audited from our community. So the EIC credit, the earned income credit, that actually is causing for the trigger of the audit, was put in place and actually addressed by the representatives that have set the code to see who is determined to be audited and who's going to be taxed at a higher amount. So if we have to look at who's being taxed, why are they not auditing, as you said, the higher income class, the individuals, business owners, the individuals that actually have the ability to hide and shuffle funds around that created the code versus actually the ones that are just trying to make a living? So looking at this right now, we have to look at the significant wealth gap that's between white and black races. You have 26% lower income in a white household from a black household. 150% lower median net worth from a white household to a black household. Yet we're being a higher rate of audits in a black household versus a white household. There's obviously a disparity that's being done, and we have to address that immediately.
So what should folks out there be doing to protect themselves?
So they say that it's race blind. It's not.
First of all, ain't no way in hell is 3 to 5 times more black people in this race blind.
It's not. It's not. Lo and behold, they put a code in place that's going to audit more black people than they are any other race. So it's not economic neutral. It's not race neutral. It is based upon a randomization. And that's the only way that we can genuinely actually audit clients properly, that we can do the proper taxes across the board. They're taxing us at a higher rate. When you have individuals that are making more income that are paying less tax than the low and median income families, it's ridiculous because they understand the discrepancies and disparities that they have to address. They understand that they actually have tax barriers and benefits with home ownership, with business ownership. So this is not being taught to our families, but we're actually being audited at a higher rate and then actually having to pay back taxes because we're trying to take some of the credits that they've put in place for the upper class, for the individuals that create this code.
Right, and that's the point that I make. It was not created for us. It was created for them.
Listen, I say it all the time. I serve on the city council in my city. And the reason I started to serve this community is because I saw the systemic racism that was created. And if we don't have a seat at the table, we cannot change these laws. So it doesn't matter white, black, Hispanic, Asian. When you're at the table and you're making decisions, you have to fight for us. Again, I'm going to thank Democratic representative from New Jersey because he fought for us. He said this is disgraceful. Any individual that's sitting at the table, you have to be a decision maker. So as a tax provider, as somebody that's actually providing this code and also being a policymaker in my city, I understand that if we're not at the table, we are going to be on the menu.
Well, this is absolutely crazy. But look, we know what it means to be black in America.
It hasn't changed. And as my buddy said, Olu told me, water's wet, sky is blue. Nothing's changed. This is who we are, but we have to continue to fight for what is right. So random audits is what we have to truly do. Do not base it upon any code that directly disparages our community. Base it upon a randomization where 1 through 6, they're picking number 4. Whatever it takes to not address the concerns that we have that's causing for us to be segregated, causing for us to be repressed, causing for us to be put into a position where we're discriminated against.
Absolutely. Douglas, appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Brother Roland, I appreciate the time as always. Thank you.
All right, folks. We'll be back on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Don't forget, folks, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button. You're commenting, hit the like button before you start commenting. Also, download our app, Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. You can also join our Bring the Funk fan club. Your dollars make it possible for us to do what we do. So send your check and money orders to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance.
We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Bill Duke.
This is Diala Riddle.
What's up, y'all? I'm Will Packer.
I'm Chrisette Michelle.
Hi, I'm Chaley Rose, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks, let's bring in our Friday panel. Glad to have them here. Matt Manning, civil rights attorney. He joins us now. Glad to have Matt. Matt, what hotel you in now? And get that orange Texas pillow out of the shot. We can't have that. Black and burnt orange don't go together. Matt joining us from Corpus Christi. Of course, we have Michael Imhotep, host of African History Network show out of Detroit. Thank goodness he ain't got no Sigma crap in the shot. And then, of course, from South Orange, New Jersey, legal analyst Candace Kelly. Glad to have all three of y'all on the show. Candace, you see this here. I mean, who these folk think they fooling? We know black folks are being targeted.
And listen, anytime that you are black in America and you're walking around the streets and something feels a little bit off, you are probably right in assuming that it is because you are black in America. So when I hear about the IRS and the audits that have probably been unlawfully done, I'm just here waiting for the lawsuit. There are a lot of people who are going to be going back in their records and saying, why was I audited? Was I a part of this? And you know that there's a discrimination lawsuit going. And let me tell you, when we talk about the IRS, we are talking about mental anguish and distress. And I'm sure that there's going to be some type of distress part of the lawsuit that's going to be a big part of it. Because anybody who knows when the IRS is on your back, it is stressful. It is stressful. So I expect a lawsuit to be coming.
And Matt, I mean, my goodness. I mean, we talk about folk with the lowest wealth in this country and being hit 3 to 5 times more when you got all these rich folk who they the ones who really need to be targeted.
Yeah, I don't think that's wrong at all. And I think what's especially insidious about this is the idea that when you look at the earned income tax credit, what you're talking about is people below a certain median, home ownership, or rather home asset value, right? Or assets in their home. So that means to me that there's an implication that these people are people who are allegedly defrauding the IRS, right? When in reality, to the brother's point earlier, we know that the people who are in business and who have the greatest means are those who employ the greatest means to avoid paying the most taxes. So one, the dog whistling there is readily apparent. But beyond that, our tax code is one that caters to a higher echelon of earner. So the idea that the lowest echelon of earners, which here obviously dovetails with Black and brown people, unfortunately, because of the disproportion in our society, shows that there's an implication that people are cheating the system. And these are the people who are not cheating the system, are in fact the people who are not, that the system is created for, which is the richer folks. So I think you're right. And I think Candace is completely right. I am interested in what the standing issue will look like regarding taxpayers. But for the IRS to come out and say this is pretty extraordinary. But I bet you it's been going on for many, many years at this point.
No doubt, Michael.
Yeah, Roland, this is not surprising. What I want to know is, what does this equate to in total dollar amounts that African Americans have to pay as a result of being audited? Like owing more to the IRS, what is that total amount nationwide? And then also it's important, so this deals with systemic racism, as we all know, except for Black conservatives. It's also important to note that African Americans pay 13% more in property taxes each year as well. And this is documented. There was a article Washington Post had in July 2020 that talks about this as well. And property taxes from 118 million households across the country were reviewed, and they found this as well. So this is something that has to be corrected. In the article from the New York Times, they talk about the algorithms, but we also see that there can be systemic racism in these algorithms as well. So this has to be fixed.
Indeed, it has to be fixed, and hopefully it gets done. Folks, today in Harlem, family and friends gathered to pay their respects to Jordan Neely, the Black man who was choked to death on a New York subway train station by Daniel Penny. Reverend Al Sharpton actually preached a eulogy at today's funeral. Of course, he was killed on May 1st. And Perry has subsequently been arrested, a former Marine, been arrested for second-degree manslaughter, where he was released on $100,000 bail. Now, Penny claims he stepped in to protect himself and other subway passengers from Neely. Now, Penny's next court date is scheduled for July 17th. You've heard a lot of folks, again, sharing their thoughts and reflections on Jordan Neely. He often was someone who was on New York subways dancing as he was a Michael Jackson impersonator, and look, he had his issues, but he was an unhoused man, and again, everyone knows there's no reason in the world that this man should be dead as a result. Again, at today's funeral, Reverend Al Sharpton preached the eulogy of Jordan Neely today. Here is some of what he said.
We keep criminalizing people with mental illness. People keep criminalizing people that need help. They don't need abuse, they need help. I want to know who called the order that it was all right for this man to choke this brother to death and go home and sleep in his bed. Who gave the order that it was all right to release him? We can't live in a city where you can choke me to death with no provocation, no weapon, no threat, and you go home and sleep in your bed while my family got to put me in a cemetery. There must be equal justice under the law. The sick part about it is that he'd been choked much of his life. The agencies that failed to keep him and give him mental health choked Jordan. Those that let him go, even though they had his record of needing help, they choked Jordan. The city agencies choked Jordan. He's been choked most of his adult life. He's an example of how you're choking the homeless, how you're choking the mentally ill, how you're choking all over this city.
Folks, again, Jordan Neely laid to rest today in Harlem. Crazy story out of Washington, D.C. A federal grand jury indicts a Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department lieutenant for his role in the January 6th domestic terror attack. But here's what's crazy about this story. This lieutenant supervised the intelligence branch of the Metropolitan Police Department. He tipped off former Proud Boy member leader Enrique Tarrio about a pending warrant for his arrest just ahead of the January 6th attack. Shane Lamont was indicted on 1 count of obstruction of justice and 3 counts of making false statements. The charges stem from the investigation into burning a Black Lives Matter banner in December 2020 when the Proud Boys were roaming the streets of D.C. for a pro-Trump event. According to the indictment, Tarrio and Lamont communicated at least 500 times using cloud-based messaging services between July 2019 and January 2021. Tarrio and other members of the far-right group were recently found guilty of seditious conspiracy in connection with the Capitol attack. Now, Tarrio was not in D.C. on January 6th. A judge banned him from the city the day before the attack. This story here is pretty crazy, Matt, because you have a D.C. cop who's over the intelligence unit who, frankly, is aligned with the Proud Boys.
Yeah, and this is a situation where when the federal judge sentences this gentleman, he's going to be sentenced with all of the force of the law, as he should be, because what makes this particularly problematic is not only that he was in a position of power, in a position of authority, and not only that the conduct itself is seditious, but the idea that he would be contacting and communicating with somebody over 500 times using a clandestine system to feed information is terrifying, because it begs the question, how much information was given? How much did he facilitate? And right now, he may be looking at the least of the charges that ultimately come. Right now it's obstruction of justice and lying, but it could ultimately be sedition. It could be all the way up to treason. If it's found with the prosecutors that, what he was communicating was directly facilitating this attack on the Capitol, which we know is obviously one of the greatest documented affronts to democracy in the history of this country, he should not only have the book thrown at him, but it should be very terrifying to all people out there to consider that the police, which we know are not obviously beyond reproach, would be intimately involved in facilitating a terrorist attack on the seat of government. That is a crazy thing to say, and that's what we're seeing here. Apparently.
Candace here, go to my iPad. Lamont worked as the supervisor of the intelligence branch of MPD's Homeland Security Bureau. And what's crazy here is that these two were in regular contact regarding Proud Boys' planned activities in the District of Columbia. And these and all of these Republicans want us to believe that you don't have law enforcement aligned with these white supremacists. And then this guy Lamont actually told people, well, because Tarrio and others were Hispanic, they were not racist.
And that's the ridiculous part about it. You have hundreds of texts filled with communication telling the Proud Boys where protesters are, people who would be against them. Now, the Proud Boys say, well, they told us that information so that we would stay away. Proud Boys are not known for going away from things that are going wrong or things that, protesters. They go to the action, and that's what was going on here, and that's why he was fired. Someone in his position, a position of power like that, someone who was supposed to be doing something opposite than what he did, this is why, as was spoken on the panel already, this is why he's going down. He is going to have the book thrown at him. It's not going to be just this. It's going to be more, because they're going to see a connecting of the dots as to the information that was given to the Proud Boys and how they disseminated themselves amongst the crowd, amongst the people, in order to carry out violent acts. If you go online right now, you will see several videos of the Proud Boys hitting other people, slamming other people down, and then the police just saying, you need to go on your way. That would never happen. If it was anybody, black, woman, or man, no one would ever get away with the police saying, I see you've hit someone and assaulted and battered someone, but now you go to walk away. So there's so much evidence that we haven't even heard about. This is just the beginning of the crack, and it's going to crack wide open, and we're going to get a lot of information, and this man is going to go down.
Back to my iPad. Here's what it says here, Michael. It says, in the indictment on November 7, 2020, vote counts revealed that President Joseph R. Biden had won the 2020 presidential election, and several news organizations began reporting this fact. At 1:08 p.m. on November 7, 2020, Lamont, this is the cop, y'all, text Tario, hey, brother, sad, sad news today. You all planning anything? Tario responded, yep. At 2:10 p.m. on November 7th, using Telegram, that's an encrypted app, Lamont told Tario that need to switch to encrypted. Alerts are being sent out to LE law enforcement as social media website accounts belonging to your people are talking about mobilizing and, quote, taking back the country, getting people spun up, just giving you a heads up. At 2:14 p.m. on November 7th, 2020, using Telegram, Tario sent Lamont an audio message. At 2:16 p.m. on November 7th, using Telegram, Lamont told Tario, got your voice messages, just giving you a heads up. Please keep this between you and me. So here you have Michael, this cop, not happy that Biden is president. He's sitting here convorting with a white supremacist member of the Proud Boys and giving them a heads up on information and saying, hey, go to the encrypted app so we can talk.
Yeah, Roland, and at the same time, I'm not surprised because white supremacists have always been involved in law enforcement, okay? I know, for instance, people periodically will get a report that say white supremacists have infiltrated law enforcement. They haven't infiltrated anything. They've always been there. When you go study Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney, June 21st, 1964, Philadelphia, Mississippi, killed by the Ku Klux Klan, the 3 civil rights workers. It was the sheriff who tipped off the Klan in which direction they went after he released them. And the Klan caught them right before they crossed the county line. So I'm not saying this is acceptable. We need to fight this. But this does not surprise me at all. And people like him need to be held to the full extent of the law.
Indeed, indeed. All right, folks, hold tight. First of all, before I go to the break, sheriff's indicted for this took place in Georgia. We covered this story here. A Georgia grand jury has indicted 3 former law enforcement officers for beating a black inmate inside a county jail. Former Camden County Deputy Ryan Beagle and detention officers Mason Garrick and Braxton Massey are facing charges of battery, simple battery, and violations of oath by a public officer. The incident happened in September when the 3 officers were caught on video beating Jared Hobbs, who was initially hit with 10 additional charges after the incident, but those charges were dropped once the video was released. If convicted, the officers could face up to 12 months in jail. However, the violation of oath by a public officer charge is a felony with a possible punishment of 1 to 5 years in prison. So, again, glad to see that happen. Now let's see if they get convicted. All right, folks, got to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Moms for Liberty. I've been warning y'all what happens when we sit out school board elections. Michael Harriot is going to join us. He has a 4-part series with The Root where he broke down how these white, crazed, deranged, anti-CRT, white, hardcore conservatives are taking over black school districts, firing black superintendents, and they're in control of our kids' education. It is a despicable thing that's happening, not just in South Carolina, but all throughout the Southeast, folks, and they are not stopping. We'll explain next on Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
That was a pivotal time. I remember Kevin Hart telling me that. He's like, man, what you doing, man? You got to stay on stage. And I was like, yeah, well, I'm young, thinking, like, I'm good. And he was absolutely right.
What show did you have at that time?
This was one-on-one.
Got it.
During that time.
So you're doing one-on-one, going great. Yeah. You making money. You like.
I'm like, I don't need to leave. I don't need to leave from Wednesday, Thursday to Sunday. I don't want to do that. It was just like, I'm gonna stay here. Or I didn't want to finish work Friday, fly out, go do a gig Saturday, Sunday. I was like, I don't have to do that. And I lost a little bit of that hunger that I had in New York. I would hit all the clubs, run around. Sometimes me and Chappelle or me and this one or that one, we'd go to the Comedy Cellar at 1 in the morning. And I mean, that was our life. We loved it. You do 2 shows in Manhattan, go to Brooklyn, leave Brooklyn, go to Queens, go to Jersey. And I got complacent. I was like, I got this money, I'm good. I don't need to go chase that, because that money wasn't at the same level that I was making, but what I was missing was that training.
Yes.
Was that.
And it wasn't the money.
It was the money, it was that's what I needed.
On the next A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, we're talking about leveling up, or to put it another way, living your very best life. How to take a bold step forward that'll rock your world.
Leveling up is different for everybody. I think we fall into this trap, which often gets us stuck because we're looking at someone else's level up journey, what leveling up means to them. For some, it might be a business venture. For some, it might be a relationship situation, but it's different for everybody.
It's all a part of A Balanced Life. That's next on Black Star Network.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Godfrey, the funniest dude on the planet. And you're watching
Roland Martin Unfiltered. Ow.
This one here? All right, let's go. All right, folks, you might remember me warning you about this group called Moms for Liberty. We had one of those crazy nutcases on the show. What was that woman's name? Keisha King? Absolutely nutcase. And they were, of course, attacking critical race theory. Republicans have been using CRT to of course, get folks all hyped up. And these folks are largely white. Now, you got some nutcase black folks who are part of Moms for Liberty. But we have seen the net result of what they did. What they started doing is they started running people for school boards. And they were highly successful in taking over school boards in the Southeast, Florida, South Carolina, and some other places. Well, Michael Harriot with The Root has done a 4-part expose breaking down how devastating these folks have been in South Carolina, how they have been taking over school districts, firing black superintendents, and they are literally now, in many cases, in control of the education of our children. Michael Harriot joins us right now. Michael, glad to have you back on the show. This was something that, I kept warning folks that it's very easy, Michael, to take over school board races because one, you don't have a lot of people who are voting. Folks don't pay a lot of attention to these races. We spend more time on, of course, presidential, U.S. Senate, congressional, gubernatorial races. And this is a way that the right has always been able to take over things. And we've seen this in Texas, in Florida, and other places. But what these folks are doing, Steve Bannon and others actually said this is what they were going to do. They were going to infiltrate and take over school districts in order to control the curriculum and the hiring, firing of superintendents and teachers.
Yeah, it is, one of the things, one of their tactics, right? But I would argue that the school board elections is quite the opposite, right? Like, I think that they are using school board elections to turn out their disinterested voters. Like, if you imagine that the average white parent, doesn't care about Trump policies. They know that he's screwing up America. They know that the Republicans don't have an agenda, right? So how do you get them excited about turning out, right? Well, threaten their children with this boogeyman called CRT. And so they've been using CRT because, in a lot of school districts, the elections the school board elections are held during, the governor's elections, during the Senate elections. And so they increased their turnout. We saw in Richland County, South Carolina, the highest rate of white turnout in 50 years because of this CRT nonsense, how they painted CRT. Because you have to be specific that they're not talking about CRT. They've created a whole new definition. But they are using it to turn out voters for all of the Republican agenda.
Right. And what we saw in 2022 a dramatic decrease in black voter turnout.
Right. We saw that because part of it was the flip side of, I think a lot of black voters got complacent after they got Trump out of office, and we didn't organize, and we just assumed that, hey, we're going to turn out like we always did, not knowing that black voter turnout is an ongoing effort and not taking into account all of the efforts that have been used to suppress black voters since Trump came into office, right? And so I think we got a little bit complacent while they were motivated by this brand new thing. They weren't concerned about the Mexican caravan anymore or immigration anymore. So they had to have something, and they coalesced around this idea of critical race theory.
So, Michael, just share with people, again, how devastating it has been with these folks now in charge.
Yeah, so one of the things that we did with the grill is we looked at 3 specific cases, right? So the first case was a woman named Gloria Boutte, right? She is like one of the godmothers of what we call culturally responsive teaching. And we looked at how they turned culturally responsive teaching, which has been around for 30 years, into critical race theory and used it. She was responsible for basically training every educator in the state in how to teach black children more effectively. She runs a center at the University of South Carolina, the largest university in the state, right? And so what they did is they basically made it illegal in different school districts to even hire her to teach their children how to teach their teachers how to teach black children. And remember, this is right after George Floyd was killed. So school districts were saying, well, we got to get some more African-American education, history, literature. And what these parents did is mobilize. In Richland County, South Carolina, which is 64% black, the district is majority black, the schools are majority black, but they managed to overturn and flip the school board because all they needed was 2 seats, right? And so all of the white people, which are a minority, voted for those 2 candidates. The top vote getter was a woman who won by 14.7%. So if all of the white people vote for those conservative candidates and they split the black vote amongst the other 11 people running for office, then the white people can affect elections with a small minority of voters. And as soon as they did it, they kicked out the superintendent of that district had been awarded by every educational association that year, in the past 2 years, as superintendent of the year, nationally, locally, statewide. He had a wall full of awards. They kicked him out. In Berkeley, South Carolina, Berkeley County, South Carolina, the black superintendent was the first black superintendent. He had worked for that district for 21 years. They took over the school board. They flipped the school board by changing the state law, putting all of the black school board representatives up for election, eliminating one of the districts, and again, using that small minority, they elected an all-white school board, kicked out the guy. And then what they're doing is they're paying these people huge severance packages, but you got to remember, these are majority black places, so the black people are paying for these problems to go away while the white people are doing it and reducing the education, the history, the culture of black people in the education system.
Michael, hold tight 1 second. I got to go to a break. We come back. We're going to continue to have this conversation and bring in our panel as well. Folks, trust me, this is their strategy, and they want to do this in school board elections this year. And they want to do it in 2024. So don't think this is sort of a one-off. This is real. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, the Black Star Network. Folks on YouTube, hit that like button, y'all. We should be way over 1,000 likes. Should be easily at 2,000 by now. Download our app. Of course, download our app, Black Star Network app. Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. You can also, of course, support us by joining our Bring the Funk fan club. Send your dollars to money orders, check money orders, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Be sure to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Available bookstores nationwide, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Books A Million. Download your copy on Audible. We'll be right back. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Next, right here on The Frequency, the woman they call the Gifted Eye, hip-hop celebrity photographer Coy Soldier. She's the master storyteller that captured the history of hip-hop through the lens of her camera.
Tupac comes out, the next thing you know, you didn't know who they were at first. You just seen all these dudes just come rushing the stage. Then you realize Biggie gets a bottle of champagne, he pops it open, sprays it on the crowd, he drinks the bottle.
Coy Soldier, the hip-hop celebrity photographer, joining me right here on the next episode of The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
What's up, what's up? I'm Dr. Ricky Dillard, the choir master.
Hey, yo, Peace World, what's going on? It's the Love King of R&B, Raheem Devon, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered. We're talking with Michael Harriot. He has a 4-part series on the route that talks about this group, Moms for Liberty, what they are doing in South Carolina, and how it really has devastating consequences for black leadership and for our children. Michael, when you were doing the research for all of this and writing this, I mean, what was the one thing that really just jumped out at you that made you go, damn, this is crazy?
Well, the most interesting part of it to me is that, like, you have a woman like Gloria Boutte, who's literally been on every continent teaching how to teach minority children. You have Baron Davis, who's won every award. You have Deion Jackson, who has a doctorate, who's been in that school district for 21 years. And then they are battling just random, uneducated white people, like the woman, Sherry Few, who led the effort in Kershaw County against Boutte. Like, she doesn't even have a college degree. Like, she is just uneducated. The women all over the country who are starting this movement, the woman in Berkeley County doesn't even have a child in Berkeley County schools. The president of Berkeley County Moms for Liberty, the woman in Richland County, she doesn't have a degree in education. Even the guy who started this whole thing, Christopher Rufo, right, who said he was quite intentionally redefining critical race theory as everything that white people hate. He doesn't have any education, experience, or training in education. And that's the crazy thing. Like, you have like the most excellent black people going up against white people who just believe things, who've never studied critical race theory, who've never studied education, who've never even studied, who don't even have a tie to the education system in their district.
Wow. And again, for them, this is not about education. It's about political power. It's about control. And it is about putting black folks in their place. Let's open up for my panel. Questions for my panel. Candace, Kelly, you first.
You know, so Moms for Liberty, they have chapters all over, and they're recruiting people heavily. I'm wondering, what do you think, in your estimation, is the equivalent of what we can do? We already have organizations in place. What do we do to combat Moms for Liberty that is, you know, basically recently just formed, and we've got organizations that have been formed for years? How do we jump in? What do you see as part of the solution?
Well, I think part of the solution is doing just exactly what Roland is doing, right? Telling people about the threat that they pose. But I think also, right, so in these anti-CRT laws that they have concocted, right, is stuff that, like, we should turn the tables on them. If they don't want us to teach about black history, like, we don't want them to teach what makes our kids uncomfortable. Why should our kids have to learn about Thomas Jefferson, right? Like, he was a slave owner and a slave rapist. Why do they have to? That makes my kids feel uncomfortable. George Washington chased owner Judge down until the day he died. So that makes my children feel uncomfortable. We should use their laws to our advantage. If they want to gerrymander black people out of the education system, then we want to gerrymander their lives and all of their history of racism out of our children's heads.
All right, Michael.
Hey, Michael, look, it's good to talk to you. I've been following this whole anti-critical race theory a lot and talked about it on my show. What I wanted to know is, I remember when this anti-critical race theory push was beginning, you had Democrats who were reluctant to fight back against it, to call out the lies that are being told by the right, things of this nature. Now this has exploded, and you have people gaining political power through local school boards. What do you think we should do now? I understand what you just said about flipping it around and talking about Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, but overall strategy to really fight this and take back this power. What do you think, especially African Americans, should do right now?
Well, first of all, we have to fight it from the inside. We have to fight it with our individual teachers, right? Like, because one of the things that people don't realize is, like, if there were people, superintendents and school board members, who wanted to teach critical race theory, like, school boards don't really control the curriculum, right? So what we have to do is fight at the state level to make sure our history is included in our curriculum. What we have to do is fight at the school board level to make sure that the people who attend those meetings aren't spreading these lies. And what we have to do, most importantly, is recognize that, like, the history of the school board, the people who are running for school board and their candidates, we should know about those candidates as much as we know about the people who are running for governor and president and secretary of state, because those are the people who, like, for instance, in Richland County, they ran this black conservative, right? So they got some white people, all the white people to vote for her, but a few black people saw, ooh, there's Lakeisha up here, so we're gonna vote for her, not knowing that she was endorsed.
Looks like we lost Michael's feed there. So if y'all can get Michael back, so we can finish the interview. I mean, the thing here, Michael, Candace, and Matt, is, again, these people are organized, they're mobilized. There's a very clear and specific strategy. And what they've done is they've caught folks slipping, Matt, in areas that people don't pay attention to. And I've spent a lot of time over the years, not just Roland Martin Unfiltered, but when I was at TV one time during a morning show, saying, folks, do not fall asleep on these school board races.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And not only that, what they're doing is leveraging, nebulous terms like liberty and freedom to galvanize support among people who are also not going to apply the critical thought to see what is in fact being protested. That's what makes this so much more dangerous. Is not only that you're attacking down ballot races that people don't know as much information about and therefore are not as invested in, but beyond that, people, see freedom, they see liberty, they see, words of these nature, and may be behind something that they wouldn't ultimately be behind if they thought more critically about it. And I think, this conversation is so crucially important because we've talked about it on this show ad nauseum. Most people have no idea what critical race theory actually is. They leverage the dog whistle because they hear the word race and think, oh, I don't want my kids being taught all this black stuff that makes me feel bad to be a white person. That's ultimately what it comes from. And that problem, if you don't have it countered with people who are running actively, of our people, who are running actively for the school boards, then you get them stacked with people who not only have no education, but have no real desire to imbue the kids with the actual truth. We're going to have generations of people who have no idea what their actual history is because their teachers are prevented from being taught it because some angry mom thinks that it's, comports with liberty to keep that from her children. So that's the problem to me, is the reverberation effects.
And what you're dealing here, Michael, is real simple. And that is, it is about power and control.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to say. That's one of my notes, Roland. We have to stop telling African Americans to vote for exercise. You don't vote to exercise your right to vote. You vote for power. This is about power acquisition. And what Stephen K. Bannon and others have taught these white conservatives is that the road to political power in America is through local school boards. And what happened was they tapped into the frustration that a lot of these white people had with COVID-19 restrictions, where their children having to wear masks in school, things of this nature. They went from that to this creating this boogeyman of critical race theory that, as Matt and others have said, most of these conservatives can't define what it is. And then what Christopher Rufo said was, he said they were going to take everything that caused discomfort among white people, put it under this umbrella of critical race theory. Okay, so if you read something in the newspapers that you didn't like or thought was crazy, you say, oh, that's critical race theory. The problem that we have on our side, and the problem with many Democrats, which is why I'm neither Democrat nor Republican, is that there was no plan to properly respond to that plan coming from the conservatives. Cornell Belcher, the pollster, Cornell Belcher, African American, he talked about on MSNBC how he had been in many meetings with Democrats early on, and he was telling them, you have to confront what's coming from the right, weaponizing critical race theory. He said many of these white Democrats didn't want to do that. This is why we have to have strategies that are independent of a political party to push our own agenda and protect us from white supremacist nonsense like this.
Well, again, what I keep saying to people is, look, majority of the kids in public schools today are black and brown. That's a fact. And if we are sitting on the sidelines and sitting out these elections, it's very easy to come in, run folks, take some resources, and take it over. And I keep telling people, this is going to be happening in South Carolina, North Carolina, rural areas, in the city as well. And so we got to be very cognizant of all of this, because this is a fundamental problem. And again, this is how they mobilize and organize. As Michael Harriot said, they were using this to energize their base. It was driven by race. It was driven by white fear. I laid out in my book, this is what it was all about. And so, frankly, a lot of us were not paying attention. There were hundreds of thousands of black people in South Carolina did not vote in 2022. This is what they did. And what did they do? They went in and started firing black superintendents, started firing black educators. Folks, this is real. This is real. And if you're sitting and watching right now and you're saying, I don't see any big deal with this, do understand this is going to spread, and you're going to look up and they're going to be in control of places where African Americans are in the majority, and we frankly can't blame anybody but ourselves when we're not doing our part to stop them. When we come back, Jim Brown, the greatest player to ever play running back. Some say he's the greatest football player ever. Died today at the age of 87, but his legacy wasn't just about football. It was also in Hollywood. It was also in civil rights. It was also in anti-gang work. We will discuss his life and legacy next, right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. Democracy in the United States is under siege. On this list of bad actors, it's easy to point out the Donald Trumps, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, or even the United States Supreme Court as the primary villains. But as David Pepper, author, scholar, and former politician himself says, there's another factor that trumps them all and resides much closer to many of our homes. His book is Laboratories of Autocracy, a wake-up call from behind the lines.
So these state houses get hijacked by the far right, then they gerrymander, they suppress the opposition, and that allows them to legislate in a way that doesn't reflect the people of that state.
David Pepper joins us on the next Black Table, here on the Black Star Network.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
He starred at Syracuse University, should have won the Heisman Trophy, but racism prevented him from doing so. Jim Brown goes to the NFL, becomes a 3-time MVP, was a 1964 NFL champion, 9-time Pro Bowler, 8-time first-team All-Pro, elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame class in 1971, named to the NFL 100 all-time team. He is considered the greatest running back to ever play the game. Folks, he played 9 seasons, retired at the top of his game, finished as the NFL career rushing leader, a record that was later broken by Emmitt Smith. Jim Brown leaves the NFL, goes to Hollywood, begins to star in a number of movies, partnered with Richard Pryor actually on a movie studio. And then, of course, he was very much involved in economic issues, civil rights, anti-gang work. Well, Jim Brown did a significant amount in his life and career. He passed away today at the age of 87. This was the announcement that was posted on social media by his wife, Monique, alerting folks about his passing. She wrote, "It is with profound sadness that I announce the passing of my husband, Jim Brown. He passed peacefully last night at our LA home. To the world, he was an activist, actor, and football to our family, football star, I'm sorry. To our family, he was a loving and wonderful husband, father, and grandfather. Our hearts are broken." Tributes have been pouring in all across social media. The NFL released their tweet announcing his passing. Go to my iPad, please. This is, of course, what they posted here, announcing all of his stats. This is a video they also posted of Jim Brown playing. Again, he had everything. He could run, he could catch, He could block. He was fast, and he was strong. He was an incredible athlete, and someone who, again, every running back in NFL history is measured by. When they talk about running backs, he is simply the gold standard in professional football. But the thing about it, he wasn't just a football player. He also was a lover of lacrosse in many ways. Paul Robeson, who also was a star athlete, he also loved lacrosse as well. And Jim Brown actually once said that he would rather play lacrosse for 6 days and play football on his 7th day. This right here is Jim Brown. This is from the Premier Lacrosse League. Jim Brown talking about lacrosse.
Who respected it and loved it. I understood that in order to be a great lacrosse player,
who we got is
you had to master the stick.
Rambo protecting, spinning, back and forth. Rambo slips away, he scores!
In lacrosse, in order to be an MVP, you have to have a lot of things going for you. You have to be a great stick handler.
Fake the behind the back, and he scores! Everybody bites on the field's fake.
Which means you can maneuver a ball in your stick maybe better than anyone that's playing the game.
Schreiber scores!
You have to have an overhead and an underhand shot.
Again, so when you look at what he did at Syracuse, he played football, he ran track, was on the cross. He was a truly all-around athlete. But again, Jim Brown's legacy is not solely about athletics. It's also about his work when it comes to the nation's youth, when it comes to anti-gang work. He founded the group American, and of course, he was very much involved in that. You talk to gang members in Los Angeles and other parts of the country, they'll tell you about Jim Brown coming into a lot of dangerous areas, sitting down with young folks, brokering peace deals as well. Kublai Toure is executive director of American in Illinois. Kublai, glad to have you on the show. For folks again who don't know what the work that Jim Brown was doing in communities, share with us what it was like working with him with the Illinois chapter. All right, Toure, are you there? All right, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I hear you, brother.
Go right ahead. Just share your thoughts about the work that Jim Brown did with his organization.
Jim Brown program, brother, started here in Chicago after the death of my son got killed in 1991. And at that time, I was on a mission. But Jim came in town, and he brought the American program. He sit me down and explained to me about the American program. The young brother, the leader of the gang that killed my son, because of brother Jim Brown. Met with that young brother, man, and let him know that I was going to kill him because he was the leader of the gang that killed my son. But Jim Brown told me, he said, brother, he said, Kublai, he said, listen. He said, we all make mistakes, man. He said, that's a young brother needs some leadership. And the problem that we have that a lot of brothers out here don't take time out, you should help some of these young guys. He said, now, if you help them, you can help the American program because that's what it's all about. And that worked with that young brother right today, Martin. The work of the American in Chicago is deep, but we never got no kind of help other than from Brother Jim Brown. And the program was self-sufficient.
But,
and that's one reason I never reached out to Jim for no help.
One of the things again, people don't know, just the number of times he mediated disputes between gangs.
Roland, very, very valid point. because of Jim, when he came in this city, he would get with me, and there would be a lot of hot issues flying up, and Jim would go in those areas with me and sit down and talk with them brothers, man. What a lot of people don't understand also, Roland, is this. Stateville Penitentiary. Jim Brown and I went to Stateville Penitentiary, talked to a lot of brothers behind the walls. A lot of them guys had a lot of influence out here on the street. And because we talked to a lot of them guys, you know, he was able to relate to him about the American program. And when a lot of them guys got out, I ran the American program in Chicago. And in Chicago, we said, educate before you agitate. Communicate and participate is a process. In the national level, it said, in a decision-making process, eliminate your negative and establish the facts, then choose your best option. The bottom line, Martin, is that the work that we put in, that Jim put in, is unspeakable, brother. For the last 30 years, I've been with that brother, man. And I went through all kinds of things. We've been all kind of problems here in Chicago. And do you know I can't get no help? I can back up everything. We initiated the Gain Truth. So many, put out so many little fires. But here's the other thing, Martin. When I became a fireman, my son got killed. But I initiated the Gain Truth because of Jim. From that point on, brother, I've been working in these streets. And Jim always had my back. And just recently, the other day when I called you, I was going to send you information about the black firefighters and this American program working in the streets. You know, right now, brother, after 30 years, I got a young brother that teach boxing over at the Robert Taylor Park named Jeff Mason, former gangster disciple. For 30 years, that brother, I've been working that program. I got another young brother, the Vice Lord, Coach Charles Rice on the West Side Lindale Eagle football team. For 30 years, brother, these programs, I've been working through the American program. So we've been doing the work, brother, but don't nobody want to give us our props. You know, as a black man, it's hard for a black man to be himself, because if you can't be yourself, then other people want to buy you off. You know, so I'm not with all that. Jim wasn't with all that, but I learned a lot from Brother Jim. He was my mentor, and he was my big brother, man, and I love that man.
Kublai Ture, we appreciate you sharing your reflections of Jim Brown. For folks, if they want to support your organization, where do they go? Is there a website they can go to?
Yeah, no, right now I don't have a website. They can always reach me by my phone number. I have no problem with it. Area code 773-443-7809. And they write, and it's American, Illinois.
All right, just repeat the phone number one more time.
773-443-7809.
All right.
Martin, let me say, may Allah bless you and your family, brother. And I'm praying that He have mercy on my big brother's soul, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'll start with you, Michael, and that is, you know, when we talk about, you listen to Kublai there are very few people who, when they walked into the room, they demanded a level of respect. Jim Brown was one of those guys. He seemed like you never ever saw Jim Brown smile, but he had the demeanor that could demand that level of respect from some of the toughest cats you can ever think of.
Yeah, I think he did. I never met Jim Brown, but I think that's correct. There was an interview he did with the Washington Post in 1979 where he talked about it being very difficult for white America to understand that if you are part of football's elite, why you're not satisfied with the recognition and the money. He wanted all of his rights as an American citizen. I remember growing up. So I was born in 71. So he retired from the NFL in 65. Probably my earliest memories of Jim Brown was seeing the movie The Dirty Dozen and watching it on TV. Okay, he was in the movie The Dirty Dozen. I remember he was in the movie Riot as well. Then I saw the blaxploitation movies, Three the Hard Way, one of my favorite movies. Okay, Three the Hard Way with probably the first black martial arts star, which was Jim Kelly. Okay, they were in that movie together. He's in the Slaughter movies as well. Then in the 1990s, he's in the movie The Original Gangsters, which reintroduces these what were termed in Ebony magazine blaxploitation stars, reintroduces them to another generation. Okay, and then you have the work that he did, the anti-gang violence work. I remember watching on CNN, like when the Rodney King verdict happened and the rebellion that took place after that, and Jim Brown talking about the work he was doing with Mayor Khan as well. And lastly, Roland, in the past couple of years, there's a movie that Regina King directed called One Night in Miami, which is a fantastic movie which deals with the fictional account of the night of February 25th, 1964, after Cassius Clay defeats Sonny Liston. And it's a fictitious account of a party that Malcolm X had back at his hotel room with Jim Brown, Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, and Sam Cooke. It's a fantastic movie. So, we really need to study Jim Brown. There may be some things that we disagree with here and there. The picture that you're showing right there is the Cleveland Summit, 1967, after Muhammad Ali is stripped of his title as well, and you have these African-American athletes. You have Lou Alcindor, before his Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I think it was Lou Alcindor. You have Bill Russell, et cetera. Many of them are there for different reasons, but it's important for us to study these African-American men.
All right, hold tight 1 second. I got to go to a break. And of course, in that photo, you saw Jim Brown and Bill Russell. We lost Bill Russell earlier this year. Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. alluded to that. I'll read his statement when we come back. Folks, you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered as we pay tribute to the legendary Jim Brown, who died last night at the age of 87. You're watching the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
And it's truly because of his greatness that the NFL has decided to rename the award given to the league leading rusher. And Barry and I are honored that that award will be given out tonight in honor of Jim Brown.
No question about it. No question. Now, please give it up for the first Jim Brown Award winner, Josh Jacobs of the Las Vegas Raiders.
And that was, of course, Jim Brown right there, folks. Go back to it. He was actually in attendance at the NFL honors there, sitting there with his wife, Monique. Again, passed away last night at the age of 87. Joining us right now is a longtime journalist who's now with The Athletic, Jim Trotter, who's covered the NFL for a number of years. Jim, glad to have you on the show. When you talk about NFL greats, we talk about greats in all areas. People throw around the phrases the GOAT, the GOAT, the GOAT. I think it's fair to say when you talk about a consensus of who is the greatest running back of all time, somebody probably would be high or drunk if they don't start with Jim Brown.
Roland, I go one step further. I've always called Jim Brown the greatest football player, period, that I know of. Now, I was too young to see him play live, but in studying him and studying what he accomplished, those sorts of things, 8 rushing titles in 9 years, 9 Pro Bowls in 9 years, 3 league MVPs, the only non-quarterback to ever win 3 MVPs in NFL history. I could keep going on and on and on, but to me, Jim Brown was the greatest football player that I know of.
If we go back to college, the reason that he's not a Heisman Trophy winner because of racism. There is no doubt he should have won the Heisman Trophy his senior year. What was it, Paul Hornick who won, who was like on a losing team? But again, it was absolute sports journalism racism that he never won the Heisman Trophy. And he set the standard, and he really began that trajectory of these great running backs coming through Syracuse.
Well, here's the thing, too, though, Roland. He was not just a great football player. He was a great lacrosse player.
And track.
As well. Yes, you could make the case that Jim Brown was maybe the greatest athlete we've ever had, period.
Now, I will throw one name out there. I would love to have that debate, Jim Brown, Paul Robeson.
Okay, you could have that debate. But I'm saying when you are the best in every sport that you compete in, and we know he was the best, in my opinion, he was the best in football. In lacrosse, he was the best. You talk about track and field, Jim Brown was he was incredible. And it's funny, I want to show you, like this book, I write about it in the column I just wrote, Jim, and I talk about how this is one of the most powerful books I've ever read, his autobiography, because of its directness, its frankness, and his ability to be unapologetic. And all the things he talks about being a black man growing up in the 50s, and all the things he dealt with in the NFL, and all the things he dealt with afterwards, and what his mindset is, and all of that. I know as a young sports writer, back in 1989 when this book came out, I was 3 years out of college. And so I'm working in newsrooms where I don't see many of me. And so there were things I wanted to articulate that I felt, but I just couldn't articulate it. And then I read his book, and I was like, wow, many of the things he is saying in here are the things that I feel that I can't articulate. And so people may find it strange when I say that a sports book is one of the most powerful books I've ever read, but his autobiography did that to me. It spoke to me in a number of different ways, and I would recommend it for anyone to read who wants to learn about him, who wants to learn about conviction, who wants to learn about standing up during times where it is either not safe or not comfortable to do so.
One of the things, I'm going to bring in Candace Kelly right here. Candace, this is a story from Anscape. Jesse Washington did this story, and it sort of speaks to what Jim Trotter was just saying there about Jim Brown, and that is his season was over for the Cleveland Browns. The article says here that he was bored, so he decided to go act in the movie. And so he's filming the movie The Dirty Dozen, as it says, to stimulate his mind. Now, he knew he was going to have to prepare for the upcoming season, and he was in the final year of a 2-year deal paying him $60,000. He wanted to play the following season, but he would have had to leave the film. And the owner of the team, Art Modell, was like, hey, sorry. He said, no veteran Browns player has been granted or will be given permission to report late to our training camp at Hiram College, and this includes Jim Brown. Should Jim fail to report to Hiram at check-in time deadline, which is Sunday, July 17th, I will have no alternative to suspend him without pay. He was like, okay, all right, no problem. And so he says Modell started fining Brown $100 for every day he didn't show up, but no one told Brown what to do, not even the owner of the team he played for. And this is what he did. He wrote the owner, Art Modell. Now, mind you, this is Art Modell, the owner, who has the greatest player on his team. And I guess he thought Jim was a regular Negro. And he wrote him this letter. I am writing to inform you that in the next few days, I will be announcing my retirement from football. This decision is final and is made only because of the future that I desire for myself, my family, and if not, to sound corny, my race. I am very sorry I did not have the information to give you at some earlier date, for one of my great concerns was to try in every way to work things out so that I could play an additional year. I was very sorry to see you make the statements that you did, because it was not a victory for you or I, but for the newspaper men. Fortunately, I seem to have a little more faith in you than you have in me. I honestly like you and will be willing to help you in any way I can, but I feel you must realize that both of us are men and that my manhood is just as important to me as yours is to you. It was indicated in the papers out of Cleveland that you tried to reach me by phone. Well, I hope you realize that when I am in my apartment, I never refuse to answer my phone. The only reason that I did not contact you before I knew the completion date of the movie is that the date was the one important factor. You must realize that your organization will make money and will remain successful whether I am there or not. The Cleveland Browns are an institution that will stand for a long, long time. I'm taking on a few projects that are very interesting to me. I have many problems to solve at this time, and I am sure you know a lot of them. So if we weigh the situation properly, the Browns have really nothing to lose. But Jim Brown has a lot to lose. I'm taking it for granted that I have your understanding and best wishes. For in my public approach to this matter, this will be the attitude that will prevail. The business matters that we will have to work out we could do when I return to Cleveland. I will give you any assistance I can, and I hope your operation will be a success. You know the areas that I can be helpful, and even if you do not ask for this help, my attitude will be one that I will do only the things that will contribute to the success of the Cleveland Browns. Your friend Jim, but the key here, he says manhood. He said, the owner, Art Modell, thought he was, I can sit here and give Jim an ultimatum and he gonna come running back. Jim was like, yeah, I'm good.
And yeah, Jim said, I'll quit right here on the movie set, which is what he did. And, this is what shows who he was as a man. He was a man of conviction. And what he was saying was, you will not disrespect me. and you will not tell me what to do. I am Jim Brown. I have my own manhood, and I'm a man of conviction. And I think that this is really important to understand about him, and this is why the standards are so high that he set for everybody who came behind him. I went to Syracuse. I'm wearing orange because of Jim Brown tonight. And, you know, when you go there, you know about Jim Brown. If you didn't know about him before you went there, you knew about him once you got there, because he's the person that set the standard. You know, when he played lacrosse, they changed the rules because he was so good. They changed the rules. This is the type of man that Jim Brown was. And I think that his conviction was really felt when he was able to, as you talked about earlier in the show, organize gangs and make sure that they understood and talked to one another. That takes a lot. That takes a lot of psychological effort, too. And that's also something that he was known about, and they talked about while I was at Syracuse University, that he used psychology on the playing field in order to get into people's minds, in order to show people that he was in control. And he used those same tactics in order to manage people around him. And that's what people know who he is and who he is about. Managing people, organizing them, making them see eye to eye. So people know him for so many things as this revered sports player in so many sports. He was the first person actually to call boxing, in terms of an African-American, to sit there and do play-by-play and talk about boxing. And he did so many other things. He's going to be remembered for so many things, but mostly he's going to be remembered because of letters like that you just read, because this was a man of conviction, Roland.
Jim, I love what he told Sports Illustrated on the set of the Dirty Dozen. He said, I could have played longer. I wanted to play this year, but it was impossible. We're running behind scheduled shooting here. For one thing, I want more mental stimulation than I would have playing football. I want to have a hand in the struggle that is taking place in our country, and I have the opportunity to do that now. I might not a year from now. And later this, he said, I quit with regret, but not sorrow.
No, one of the things he says in his book, too, Roland, is he says that he was always thinking about life after football. And he said, for many athletes, there's a sharp decline because you leave all that adulation and you go to where now you're just a guy in many instances. And so for him, he said acting was a way to soften that landing spot in terms of him coming down. But I wanted to read something else to you out of this book when we're talking about a man of conviction. And I'll do it real quick here. He says, I've heard it a lot over the years. Paul Brown and other coaches didn't like this about my attitude, didn't like that. But they loved the damn performance. They were right about one thing. I did have an attitude. And my attitude, and this is what my coaches could never see, was not shaped only by the game of football. If my mind was limited to football, per the desires of the Cleveland Browns staff, which would later be fired by Art Modell, what type of man would that make me? My attitude was shaped by my personal conviction. It was shaped by society and my role in that society. It was shaped by being black in America in the 1950s. And if it wasn't for that attitude that people spoke of, I never would have made it to the Cleveland Browns. Man, Jim Brown was just different. And that's what I loved about him in terms of he was unapologetic and unafraid when it came to speaking his truth. And we don't see that in a lot of athletes today, which as I get older is disappointing, because I think guys like Jim Brown, Bill Russell, and others had laid the groundwork for black athletes to be able to speak up and to stand on their conviction. So for me, you know, I know some people want to focus on the other things, and that's fine. Jim Brown was a lot like life. He was complex. But in terms of how he made me feel, do I think he was a great man? Yeah, I do. Do I think he was flawed? Without question. But Jim Brown, to me, provided some purpose in terms of understanding who I was and how I wanted to carry myself in terms of addressing certain things in certain situations.
Indeed. Hold tight 1 second. Got to go to a break. We come back. Marshall Faulk, Hall of Famer, will join us. Terrell Owens will join us as well. Also, we'll be talking with Ricky, another Hall of Famer, Ricky Jackson. Also share some social media posts of various folks like Eric Dickerson, Emmett Smith, Barry Sanders, and others as they remember Jim Brown, who passed away at the age of 87. We'll be right back on the Black Star Network.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. Democracy in the United States is under siege. On this list of bad actors, it's easy to point out the Donald Trumps, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, or even the United States Supreme Court as the primary villains. But as David Pepper, author, scholar, and former politician himself says, there's another factor that trumps them all and resides much closer to many of our homes. His book is Laboratories of Autocracy, a wake-up call from behind the lines.
So these state houses get hijacked by the far right, then they gerrymander, they suppress the opposition, and that allows them to legislate in a way that doesn't reflect the people of that state.
David Pepper joins us on the next Black Table, here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. This here was a tweet Eric Dickerson sent out, another Hall of Fame running back. I just landed from my flight and saw all the text messages. Jim was not just a great football player, but an even greater human being. We need more people like Jim Brown. He'll forever be the standard of how the great running backs are measured in our game. Till we meet again, my friend. Folks, last year we were at their 80th birthday party for Richard Roundtree, and it was, of course, a great time had there. Jim Brown showed up and paid his respects there, and so we'll show you that in a little bit. But right now, we're joined by another Hall of Famer, Terrell Owens. We're setting up his shot and getting his audio straight. He'll join us in just a second. It was, I guess 3 or 4 years ago, maybe even longer. I actually did an interview with T.O. and Jim Brown at Jim Brown's home in Los Angeles. I am trying to get hold of a copy of that from the producer, Stacey Dillon. We'll try to stream that over the weekend or on Monday. It was a great conversation we had it was separate interviews I did with T.O. and then I did one with Jim Brown. Took place again at Jim's home there in Hollywood Hills. And so, do we have T.O.? Is he ready? Okay, all right, so we're trying to get Terrell's audio straight as we speak, and so we're doing that. Let me pull up what Emmitt Smith posted about Jim Brown. He posted this here. My heart aches at this very moment after hearing of the passing of Jim Brown. He is and was a true legend in sports and in the community, using his platform to help others. Thanks, King. This here is a photo of Emmitt Smith as Barry Sanders, two of the greatest running backs ever, as they take a photo there with the greatest himself, Jim Brown. And of course, that was there. And so Barry Sanders also was tweeting as well. I want to pull up before I go to TO. I want to share with you what Barry Sanders posted. He said, you can't underestimate the impact Jim Brown had on the NFL. He will be greatly missed. Additionally, his generosity and friendship with my family is a gift that we will always treasure. Our thoughts and prayers are with the Brown family and Brown fans at this time. And again, this is a photo there of Emmitt Smith, Jim Brown, and Barry Sanders. Joining us right now is Hall of Famer Terrell Owens. T.O., glad to have you on the show. It was a few years ago. We were at Jim Brown's house.
Terrell.
Yep. I got you, T.O. Can you hear me? T.O., can you hear me?
I hear you.
All right. So it was a few years ago. We were at Jim Brown's house when I sat down and interviewed you and Jim. Just share with folks your relationship with Jim Brown.
Oh, man, I think when you think about just football in general and just what he's meant to the black community, there's not enough to be said. And you just think about the impact, just the culture, the black community. He's done so many great things, and he's been a pillar for the success of so many, athletes that look like me. So for me, just to be in his presence, to be there with his wife, is definitely one of those moments I'll never forget. And I was, like I said, you were there. For me, just to lose someone like this, this is an icon. This is a great one that we've lost. And I think LeBron said it best. I think if you're a person of color, especially an athlete, and don't know who he is, this is definitely a moment to go and research and understand what Jim Brown has meant to many just people of color and just many of athletes across the country.
Yeah, you play wide receiver, but with the running backs, they really revered him in a different way as well. This is Jerome Bettis. I was texting Jerome earlier. He was actually at a benefit for Reggie McKenzie. He tweeted, "Today we lost a true legend. May Jim Brown, my Pro Football Hall of Fame brother, rest in peace and power." This is Bettis and Jim Brown right here. And the thing, again, it's just something about, again, those running backs. And again, when you look at Emmitt Smith and Barry Sanders and Eric Dickerson and Jerome Bettis and so many others, as they think about and reflect on Jim Brown and what he meant to the position, but also to the NFL. And he was also someone, he didn't take no stuff. He didn't take no stuff from nobody. Earlier I read how he left the Browns. He was not going to let anybody tell him what to do.
Right. I think if you look at what he did, I think now you're seeing a lot of athletes that are, realizing their power and using their leverage, using their voice to speak up on a number of issues. And I think LeBron has really kind of taken that torch and that mantle and really doing that for a lot of athletes. A lot of people have even said that I was, when I played, I was one of those guys. I didn't really take a lot of stuff either. I was very outspoken, and that was often kind of misconstrued as being arrogant and cocky. But for me, again, I knew my worth. And I think I was reading something earlier when all this happened, and I came across an interview that Jim Brown had done with Sports Illustrated in 2002. And I hope a lot of athletes would really listen to and really just take note to what he said. In this article, he goes on to say that there are beneficiaries of our struggle, Brown said about modern black athletes in this interview. He said, but they don't recognize that because they're inundated with agents, managers, lawyers, and team owners who don't want them to do anything but play ball and hopefully keep themselves out of trouble and just be physical freaks of nature with no awareness of decision-making power. And that's honestly where we are right now. You think about the National Football League. This is the only sport that honestly has a lot of wear and tear on our body that doesn't have guaranteed contracts. These athletes have to understand how much leverage and how much power that they have to get those guaranteed contracts if they truly want them. And again, NFL is made up of 70+% black and brown athletes. If they want these guaranteed contracts that obviously some of these other sports are garnering, they have to understand their leverage. They have to understand their power. And this is what Jim Brown was alluding to. And this has been going on for many, many years. And it takes a number of these guys to honestly get together in order to do that. The NFLPA, the union, is not as strong as some of these other unions like the NBA, MLB. And a lot of people don't know this, but the National Football League makes more money than the NBA and Major League Baseball combined. And there's no reason why us as athletes, especially these new guys that will be coming into this new money, that they shouldn't have guaranteed contracts. What Lamar Jackson had to go through over this last few months, that shouldn't happen.
Indeed. T.O., we appreciate you, Joe, and taking some time, man, to share your thoughts and reflections about the passing of Jim Brown. Thanks a bunch.
Absolutely. And all my best go out to his family.
Thanks so much. We appreciate it. Matt, what T.O. said there, we talked about a little bit earlier in terms of how Jim Brown operated. I remember he said, look, I ain't taking all these hits in the NFL. I'm getting paid more money to lay up with Raquel Welch.
Yeah, and first I'll say I'm a little younger, so I obviously didn't get a chance to watch Jim Brown play, but I did play lacrosse at Howard, and it's interesting because I remember the coach saying that just so frequently. Oh man, greatest lacrosse player of all time is Jim Brown, and it dawned on me then that we're talking about a man who had played before any of us had ever lived, and his legend so far outshone his playing days that we were still talking about it, 60 years later, which I think is just a testament to the titanic proportions of his ability. But what I thought was great about that letter, and especially that I think T.O. hit on beautifully, is not only the social responsibility that athletes have, that many of them are shouldering that burden, and really in a great way, but beyond that, the idea that, look, you are the ones that put the butts in the seats. You have the leverage. And that's an important lesson, not only for the athletes, but for all of us, because so many of us create value for corporations and for agencies and other places and don't fully understand how much they rely on us and how much they need us to accomplish their goals. So I like the idea that athletes are empowered to not only realize, their social responsibility, but realize how they can leverage their position and say, look, NFL, we make so much money for you. We need guaranteed contracts. And if you don't give us those contracts, here are our consequences. So I think he was a model in that respect. And I just think, obviously, he was a titan. And to be a person who has set so many standards in so many different realms is really an extraordinary thing. And I'm appreciative of his legacy and his stalwart commitment to living his truth as a black man unapologetically.
Indeed. All right, I got to go to a break real quick. When we come back, we'll have more tributes to Jim Brown, folks. Again, passed away last night at his Los Angeles home at the age of 87. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, nurses are the backbone of the healthcare industry, and yet only 7% of them are Black. What's the reason for that low number? Well, a lack of opportunities and growth in their profession. Joining us on the next Get Wealthy is Neely Bartanilli. She's going to be sharing exactly what nurses need to do and what approach they need to take ownership of their success.
So the Black Nurse Collaborative really spawned from a place and a desire to create opportunities to uplift each other, those of us in the profession, to also look and reach back and create pipelines and opportunities for other nurses like us.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA.
And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Well, I was on the golf course earlier today when I got the news of the passing of Jim Brown. Folks were texting me and blowing my phone up. And, of course, Jim Brown was a huge golfer himself, always playing golf. So it's only fitting we would talk to Hall of Famer Marshall Faulk, who's on the golf course right now. Marshall, always glad to see you, my brother. Jim Brown loved the game of golf, and so did the both of us. Just share your thoughts and reflections about this legend.
Man, a life well lived. And I think that, we'll talk a lot about Jim and what he did in football. But when you got to think about the transition that he made into acting and then being an activist with the American Foundation and all the stuff that he did to help solve the gang issues in L.A., people don't really understand a lot of what Jim Brown did. And I know for me, what he meant to me, not just as a football player, but just as a role model and as a mentor, providing me the stability to have the career that I had by just giving me information. Jim was a wise guy, and he was there for a lot of us who came up looking for those role models in our life.
Marshall, there was a guy who played golf with Jim in Dallas, and he was talking about Jim's peripheral vision. And see, you already know what's coming. And so for folks who don't know in golf, I mean, so when you're playing golf, y'all, you can see, you got people, you don't want folks in your sight. But he said his sight was so ridiculous, he didn't want anybody standing here, or even behind him, because he literally saw all of that. That's what made him a great running back. It frustrated the hell out of folks playing golf with him. They were like, Jim, hit the damn ball.
Roland, every time I played golf with Jim, I figured out after maybe the second time, when he's getting ready to hit, he's on the tee box, I'm just going to stay in the cart. That's it. You couldn't, you were pretty much going to be wrong. And then on the green, if you were standing behind him and he missed the putt and he had the putty going back, you had to walk around and get behind him. His peripheral vision was so good, but he was just fun to play with, and he will be missed, man. God will be missed.
I was talking to T.O., and I said, obviously, for running backs, for you guys, Jim Brown was something different. He was the gold standard. When you talk about speed, agility, power, strength, he can run, he can catch. That's who everybody is measured up against.
Yeah, 100%. And the one thing about Jim that you had to understand, for us as running backs, we're competitive, we're narcissistic, we all think that we are the best. But with Jim, it was like, nah, Jim's the GOAT. He's our guy. And we all gave it to him. Every time at the Hall of Fame, we got together and we kind of started it. The backfield wasn't too crowded for all of us, whether it was Emmett, Marcus, Jerome, Eric, all of us, we understood that Jim Brown was the GOAT of all GOATs when it came to playing the position.
Right. That's, like in basketball, they like, Russell, Kareem, Michael. But the bottom line is kind of like Jim Brown. Okay, y'all can talk about 2 through whatever. But he was number one. One of the things that I read earlier, how he walked away from the Browns. He was about manhood. He was about, you are going to respect me. And he walked away from the game. He literally was, 9 years, he was still in tip-top form. He could have rushed for another 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 yards if he wanted to.
Yeah, walked away from the game. And here's the thing you got to remember. It wasn't just about that you were going to respect him. He respected you. So you were kind of forced to give Jim the respect because he gave the respect. And I just remember when I met him back in 1994, and he knew who I was. I was like, Jim Brown, you know me?
Right.
It was like, you know me. And Jim knew who I was. So just the respect was there. Leaving the game early because it wasn't fair and what he meant to the game. And then later on, the NFL embracing everything about Jim Brown and what he stood for. And I think when you look back at the Kaepernick situation and a lot of that stuff, we didn't have social media. He didn't have the media on his side. Jim Brown was an activist. He left the game, and people just wrote him off as if he was, just a guy bitter. But now you see the icon that he was and the work that he did. And I hope that people look at him as more than just a football player.
Well, absolutely. We lost earlier Bill Russell, and a lot of people completely forgot about what Bill Russell did off the court. And he was more than a basketball player, and so was Jim Brown. Marshall, I appreciate you taking time out of your golf round to join us to pay tribute to Jim Brown. He would love it. He would absolutely love the fact that you would be talking about him from the golf course.
100%. Roland, thanks for having me on, man. Jim Brown will be missed, man. R.I.P. JB32.
My brother, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
All righty.
Folks, he talked earlier, I think it was T.O., he mentioned LeBron James. NBA put this video out here. This was during the game in Cleveland when LeBron James, he paid tribute to Jim Brown. Watch this.
Have been terrific on their home floor over the last several months. 26-2 in their last 28 home games.
You have it?
Including 6-1 in the playoffs. The only home loss, as you see LeBron James bowing to James Brown, the legendary Cleveland Brown, as he gets set for the tip-off.
We're not talking the singer, Mike. We're talking Jim Brown, the football player.
I should call him Mr.
Yeah, we all should. That's the greatness in the building here tonight.
And this was right before the game. Mr. Jim Brown.
And you could take that for granted. That is two of the best athletes that we've ever seen all time.
That's something that when your other athletes do that. This is the tweet, Instagram post that LeBron James put up. We lost a hero today. Rest in paradise to the legend Jim Brown. I hope every black athlete takes the time to educate themselves about this incredible man and what he did to change all of our lives. We will stand on your shoulders, Jim Brown. If you grew up in Northeast Ohio and were black, Jim Brown was a god. As a kid who loved football, I really just thought of him as the greatest Cleveland Brown to ever play. Then I started my own journey as a professional athlete, and I realized what he did socially was his true greatness. When I choose to speak out, I always think about Jim Brown. I can only speak because Jim broke down those walls for me. I am so grateful that I was able to call you my friend. I hope I can continue to honor your legacy with my words and actions. My prayers to your family. I know they are all incredibly proud of everything you did for our community. Hashtag legends never die. That was LeBron James, folks, talking about Jim Brown. Final comments from my panel. I will start with the fellow Orangeman, Candace Kelly. Candace.
Well, I just want to say that it's amazing to see the seeds that he planted and what has grown from it. Because when we look at Jim Brown, he was talking years ago about how athletes and black bodies were treated, and we're still talking about concussions and how we're treated. And he was talking about agency and making decisions for himself and getting involved in other things that would exercise his mind. And now we're still looking at athletes who are following in his footpath because of the seeds that he planted, because they have their own agency. They're kneeling on the field. They're doing what they need to do in order to make sure that in terms of race and politics in America, that they are keeping, center in that regard. And so I just want to say that, Jim Brown is one of those people that is just hard to duplicate. And a number of people are going to remember him for not only the man that he was on the field, but off the field too, because he was a legacy in both arenas.
I think what people have to understand, Matt, is that when you are an athlete, it's very easy for folks to remember your exploits on the field, on the court, on the baseball diamond. But the reality is you can do more with that. And when we think about Muhammad Ali, when we think about Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Jim Brown, I mean, these were true icons, but who understood the assignment, Jackie Robinson as well. They understood that they could use their power, their force for good to help black folks, to help the community at large. It wasn't just about them.
I'll take it a step further and say they understood they are duty bound to do that, right? That's what we're hearing from all of his compatriots and everyone who shared memories about Jim Brown, is that he exuded the social responsibility to help solve the gang problem, to be a role model for black people, to help people understand their leverage and their value. And that's what I hope people take away from this. You control your destiny. Think always how to leave that legacy, but also think about where you are obliged to your fellow person to help them along the way. And, you know, especially in a small insular group like professional athletes, how important is it to have a titan help you along the way and helping you find your own path? So what I hope is instructive to people here is that we have a responsibility to be that for each other. And I think Jim Brown modeled that masterfully.
Michael.
Yeah, Roland, you know, once again, Jim Brown is somebody we need to study. He's complex as well. And also, we're talking about Jim Brown on the 98th birthday of Malcolm X as well. May 19th is Malcolm X's birthday. And we know that I encourage people to watch that movie from director Regina King, One Night in Miami, because Jim Brown connects us to Malcolm X, connects us to Muhammad Ali, connects us to what's taking place during that period of time and the fight for civil rights and things like this, fighting against racism, et cetera. And then being an activist at the ground level. So it's one thing to, you know, just do interviews talking about the problem, but he's an activist at the ground level dealing with gang interventions and ceasefires and things of this nature. So he's somebody that needs to be studied. And when we look at many African-American athletes today, you know, you have the right Wayne, the Laura Ingrahams, things like this, telling African-American athletes to shut up and dribble, okay? She probably would have said the same thing about Jim Brown back in the day as well.
Folks, we will end this tribute by hearing Jim Brown himself. This is what the Cleveland Browns posted when he was recognized as one of the greatest 100 players in NFL history. Jim Brown, dead at the age of 87. We want to thank everybody for watching this tribute to him, and we'll see you on Monday right here in Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
I don't know who wrote the list, but when I look at myself, God gave me a physique.
This is Jim Brown, the most devastating ball carrier in the history of football.
I was 6'2", 232 pounds, and I had quickness and speed, and the word got around that I was a different kind of guy.
An animal, a real raw talent, man. See, my father made me understand it. He said, watch this, boy. He don't run out of bounds. He gonna put his head down, he gonna get some more. And when he got tackled, he said, watch how slow he get up. He said, you know what that is? He said, in life, just get up slow, because you're gonna have to pick yourself up a bunch of times. Ain't no need to rush it. And this dude never missed a game. Every Sunday we watched, Jim Brown was on the field.
Jim Brown's the greatest back to ever play. He was a bad man. And not only on the field, Jim Brown being an activist had an impact on me as well.
He was around at a time, man, where America was trying to change with civil rights. And for him to be an athlete and get involved in it was like inspirational, because I'm like, man, this is Jim Brown saying we got to stand up, stay together. That was Jim Brown out there on the front line.
He also was very keen on economic issues, which for most black athletes, they never ever were connected with that. Jim Brown tried to bring the community together in ways that had nothing to do with sports. And he pursued acting, and incredibly, he had some good roles and played in some good movies.
I want more mental stimulation. I want to have a hand in the struggle that is taking place in our country.
His footprint was so big that the respect you have for him, and now he's changed the game and set the blueprint for all the backs who played this game, is very impactful.
You know, you gotta look for a little black kid back in the 60s, man. This is doable, you mean? And so, you know, he was quite an inspiration.